Welcome back to We Bought a Mic, podcast about movies, television, music, and Arrakis. Spice. Big worms. Welcome to Dune 2. Dune Part 2.
Tune.
The pod is here. The deep dive is here. My name's Ernest.
I just drank the water of life and I have an unborn fetus inside of me. My name is Kwisatz Haderach.
Is that racist to even?
Kwisatz Haderach.
Oh, you're just adding their words to
Okay, fine. I'll be Baron Hunterkanen.
Yeah, fuck the heart.
That's pretty good.
That wasn't pretty good.
I'm Shai Hulud.
And I am Little Mouse.
But is it Shai Hulud like SHY? Like I'm Shai
Oh,
Hulud.
No, I thought you were Droon too.
Droon.
Did you bust out that one Ford?
Did I do that the first time?
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh man.
You know, I listened back to that episode.
I was on fire.
I was kind of hot, wasn't I?
We loved that movie a lot. Like we praised that.
Okay.
And I wish I would have clipped out like specific things we said that I could replay right now, but I didn't do that. But Drew, you were dropping some heaters of your expectations for part 2. You were like, I'm paraphrasing, but you were like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen in my whole life. And I'm expecting part 2 to be even better.
Wow.
Something like that. Not your exact words, but that was the energy you had.
Well, especially if we're taking those words literally, like I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because visually it was like the best looking thing I had ever seen. And I do think that this movie looks better. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Saw it in IMAX, pretty close up, little to the left. Didn't bother me.
Surrounded.
Yeah, I don't remember having those takes. When did Dune come out? Even
21.
21. It was October 2021. It was
Yeah.
a day and date release with Max. So a lot of people at the time, the artist formerly known as HBO Max,
Yeah.
just released straight up there.
You're a big Denis boy. That was really the main takeaway.
Okay.
It's like
I couldn't remember because I do remember being more negative on it. Like thought that at
you
the
called
time,
it incomplete.
I thought at the time I came across more negative than I felt about it at the time. And I think that like it's a thing where just anytime I see a part 1, I have a little bit of like a guttural reaction of just like, give me the full thing. I'll watch 5 hours of a movie if it's a good movie. But here's the thing about part 1 is that if it's done well, the part 2 hits, and boy, oh boy, does it hit.
Yeah.
there's a real genuine parallel going on here between this and the Spider-Verse movies.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes.
Just visually, like not comparable to anything else ever. The highest level of quality that we've seen come out of a big franchise in a long time.
And they're both kind of vying for the best trilogy since Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Which is, the only comparable.
I've seen a lot of comps to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
with this.
just because what else could you know what I
Right.
mean?
Everybody wants to compare it to Empire, but like, I'm sorry, the Dune movies are better than Star Wars.
Oh, let's
I'm
go.
sorry. I'll say
This
it.
is
Like,
the
I
real
just-
take
okay,
right
like,
here.
We just want to put that out there. Like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, kids, you can have your toys with Star Wars, but like Dune is fucking for adults.
This is where it starts. This is where the spice starts to hit.
The spice has been flowing.
Is with these spicy takes. I mean, the thing with Star Wars is not only is it influenced by Dune, like George Lucas lifted so many elements from Dune, but also it's like it has proven itself as more of a cultural mainstay just because it's been around for so long. But it's been fascinating to see people like, to me, one of the best things about Dune Part 2 is the cultural ripple effects that it continues to have. We're recording this, 2-3 weeks after release?
Yeah. Something
like that. And I still see it in the conversation online. The memes are just popping off. Lisan al-Gaib. And a lot of these people are like, oh my God, this is like Anakin Skywalker. Like, what is this? So there are a lot of parallels, but the fact that it might be better, I think is a really, really cool conversation to have. Obviously, we still need part 3, Messiah, coming soon, 2027, to really feel this as a real trilogy. But yeah, the comps to things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars are definitely apt. To me, I don't know. I'm so in love with these movies that it's hard for me to separate myself and like judge them in a more objective way as they stand in the canon of sci-fi and film.
How far did you read into the books? Was it
just the first one?
Just the first?
Oh, so you have not read Messiah?
No, I want to. I'm torn because I would like to see a Dune movie that I'm genuinely surprised by, because I kind of knew everything that was going to happen here because of the book. And as much as I want to experience the book Messiah, I kind of want to wait.
Well, I mean, so now is a good time to litigate with yourself. Is the book better for you, or are the first two movies better for you?
The book is great in how much time it spends describing a lot of ecological systems of Arrakis, the technology, like all the different ways that they preserve water. You see it in the little pumps.
The poo-poo and the pee-pee.
Yeah. Oh, lots of poo and pee-pee in the still suit. So it's a very different experience. In the book, the final battle is just like a sentence long. Maybe it's a couple sentences, but it's just like they fought. So anyway, Paul.
Frank Herbert does not really care about details in those moments.
Right. So it's like a lot of the main action is happening off screen, so to say, in the book. It focuses a lot more on environmental details and like political machinations, a lot of scheming, a lot of conversations of people like scheming.
You know, so I was going to ask this later on the pod, but I will ask now, like, how much of a role does the Empire and the Emperor and the Florence Pugh character play in the books? Are we flashing back more frequently than we are in the movie?
So
to all of that?
I actually have a whole section of my notes devoted to differences between the movie.
We don't have to jump right to that now, but
so that'll be something good to get into, because we still got to like kind of talk more broadly about the film. But I will say, Irulan is a huge part of the book. Mm-hmm. The framing device of that character, the little podcast that she's recording, the little solo diary, that is a
welcome back to another episode of Unspooled.
Right. That's how like the chapter markers are in the book. Like every time a little Princess Irulan like soundbite pops up in the text, it's like a shift in perspective, like another character. It's a chapter marker.
So I'm sure that was cool then, watching the movie the first time that Dune Part 2 starts with an Irulan voiceover. You're like, new chapter beginning right now.
So we'll get into all those details. We'll get into the cast. This is a big bold Dune
so
episode.
I did want to start here. And I wanted to kind of talk, do a little bit of table setting before we get into Dune. I think that it's safe to say that we all three of us are going to be very, very pro Dune here.
If people didn't listen to our early like reaction leading up to release, this is fucking absolute cinema.
Yeah, it's a banger.
This is insane.
It's at almost $600 million, which, given how dense some of the material is in here, is like a miracle.
Yeah, there's so much to dig into with the story and the themes and the characters. Like, there's a lot of meat on the bone here for this discussion, but just off rip, like, it fucking rocks so hard. Just as a movie, just sitting there and your ass getting fried by the IMAX sound and your eyeballs just like destroyed by these incredible visuals. And then you start to get into the amazing rich storytelling. But just that alone, just the joy of going to the movies and being genuinely like wowed and amazed at the experience is just so rare.
It really is. And I'm a proponent of skipping the movies for certain types of movie. You know what I mean? If you
we got nice TVs, we got nice sound systems.
Yeah, exactly. There are plenty
of harder
times.
And harder especially for like average John in Midwest America to just like. I almost called him Joe Movie, but as you pointed out before, Joe Movie is going to all of the movies, so I have to find a new Midwest
Tractor Bill,
guy.
Joe the Plumber.
Bill, yeah. Joe the Plumber, go see Dune in a big fucking movie screen because man, oh man.
Yeah, it's really this is what they're like engineered for, is sort of just like like blowing your shit away. It's like when, a lot of people will have like a sports car, but all they do is just like drive to work. And it's like, no. You got to get on the damn track with that.
Are you like calling out the guy who drives a purple Lambo down Winter Park every day? And I just see him driving on Fairbanks at 25 miles an hour. No. And I'm like, I know.
Brother, and it's like, you better be on I-4 at 3 a.m. pacing off every old person in Orange County. For the love of God. This is like, it's just like high octane viewing. Every shot is gorgeous, and very intentional. It's one of those where like you think about the undertaking of directing something like this. Oof. In addition to co-writing the screenplay, and you're like, well, my God. And like, how does he do this without having like an anxiety attack every day?
It's so
master.
It's so much work.
I think I probably mentioned this whenever we did our preview episode, but going into Dune Part 2, my most anticipated movie of the year, I did a watch through of Denis movies, with the exception of his first couple movies, so August 32nd, Maelstrom, Polytechnic, but starting
the
Incendies
3 French films.
Yes. Well, Incendies is French as well, but
that's the one that really
bilingual.
Kicked
that was the one that
it.
I think he won the Oscar for Best International Feature, or maybe he didn't win an Oscar.
It was
nominated though. That was the movie that like put him on the map in America and in Hollywood. And I was really excited for Dune 2, but then it was going through his filmography where it's like I've seen a lot of anti-Denis takes because that's just naturally what's going to happen in the aftermath of something becoming as big as Dune 2 is. You're going to have the haters come out of the woodwork of just being like, oh, this guy's like
overrated.
He's overrated, whatever. I don't think that there's any denial that like he's the greatest visual filmmaker of the 21st century. I'm sorry, no, I think Nolan is the other person that people would point to as like as far as big Hollywood filmmakers go, but in almost every one of Denis' movies, he has something in there that it's like, I have never seen that before. From most of the time from a visual perspective, like the first time that you go over the cliffs in Arrival and you see the spaceship there, or you see the alien there, or going to Blade Runner 2049, you're taking this legacy thing that everyone has an association with and making it look so wholly new and unique. And I think that the same could be said for all of his movies. Even a lot of ways, the storytelling devices, like looking back at something like Prisoners is a movie that it has the Zodiac to it. It has those kind of like movies that you've seen before, but there's something so like dark underneath. There's something so sinister, and it's something that is in Denis' filmography, this kind of desire for control, for power, that permeates through his filmography. And I think that through line matches so perfectly with Dune and with the story that Frank Herbert wrote here, and with the story of Paul Atreides, that it's like, it's this perfect Titanic explosion of all of the strengths coming together to make something truly special.
I think one of the biggest things in the conversation around this movie is the things it does with its story to subvert the idea of the Messiah, white savior, colonialist sort of archetype. Even something as ubiquitous as Star Wars kind of has that a little bit, even if it's not the standard template of your Dances with Wolves, your avatars of an actual like white person saving a group of native people. And there's a lot in the original Frank Herbert book about this, but the conversation right now I think is super interesting because there are still people today. This movie's a huge hit. A lot of people are seeing it. A lot of different kinds of people are seeing it. That it's still kind of difficult for them to really know what Dune is about. And that has been one of the most fascinating things about seeing it hit the way it has hit and really get broken apart as much as it has, because it reveals how necessary a story like this is in the modern era, where it can come and say all these things that Frank Herbert was originally talking about, 50 years ago, something like that, in the 60s. And still have people like not quite get it. The second book, Messiah, is like a reaction in a way of people not getting it and really turning that screw a little bit tighter so people know it's very obvious. Because the first book, you don't really get as overt of a picture of what the Paul Atreides character really is. It takes, from what I know, it takes until Messiah for it to be very obvious. And Denis, in his genius of adapting this, he takes all that knowledge into the film. Even going back to the original, the first one, it opens with Zendaya talking about who will our next oppressors be, cut to Paul. Like Denis is very consciously laying that groundwork, putting that foundation down so that in part 2, it's all incredible payoff. And if we can just start by shouting out Timmy and his performance,
man,
he carries this role.
I didn't know
Paul Atreides.
I mean, I think that we all knew he had the juice in him, but this is like you finally see it. It's LeBron James coming on and like he's the chosen one, and then he plays like he gets in his first playoff series, and you're like, there he is. There's our boy. There's the prince who was promised. He is here.
I related a lot to what's his name's character. The whole movie, he's going like, "Yep, that's the guy. That's the Messiah. I told you guys."
Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisan al-Gaib.
That's been me the last like 5 years talking about Timmy Chalamet.
Every time he makes a choice and he's like, he's gonna be the next Willy Wonka. He's like, well, he would choose to be the next Willy Wonka. That's actually a smart move to do that.
Yeah, he he's incredible in this movie. Really, generally speaking, that is a really savvy move. I'm sure that like, the producers or the studio may have a lot to do with this, but the cast of this, they could have, this movie doesn't necessarily like call for itself to be very, pop culture sort of teen friendly, but they cast people that people talk about. And the casting director is named Francine Meisler. She's done a lot of incredible stuff. She's become sort of a mainstay in like the 21st century. She's worked with Timmy a few times before. Like I think she did Bones and All. She did Don't Look Up, which he's in, right?
Yeah.
Another like cast where, but that's the problem. Don't Look Up is like almost the flip side of this, where when you have too many people in the cast, it can become distracting.
Yeah.
Like it can just be a thing where it's just like, oh, look, now Florence Pugh is here.
Yeah,
and,
but
look, it's over there. This is a movie that makes you believe in movie stars again, man.
Yeah,
this is a movie that's like,
stars all over
we'll be okay.
We're going to be
we'll
looking back on this movie as a big cornerstone of the next generation.
Especially with, spoiler alert, Anya Taylor-Joy coming soon.
Right.
Another one.
Yeah, exactly. They keep sort of reloading with like hot young stars because, I mean, so another one, and maybe one of the better casting jobs ever done is she cast Succession.
Oh wow!
Which is like that's
perfect.
Yeah, that was plucking a lot of people like that people were not thinking of and putting them in roles that they were not typecast for. Anyway, in this movie, we got Anya coming. In this movie, we get Austin, who is
a little freak boy.
Man.
Hey, I didn't see him be Elvis. I didn't know he was good. He's really good.
I saw him as Elvis, and honestly, I think that he is incredible as Elvis. Like that is a movie with like countless flaws.
He's very good in it,
but he is phenomenal in that like deeply flawed movie. I did not know that he could do this though, because the thing is, it's so easy whenever you are a young movie star to just be like, I refuse to play the villain in anything. I don't want to. It's the Tom Cruise thing where Tom Cruise is like, I'm the hot young thing. Why would I be the villain? I want everybody to like me. And instead he's like, Austin Butler has the awareness and the talent as an actor to be like, make me as disgusting and vile as possible.
And it's also, I'm not the first person to say this, but if you were to name one celebrity that looks the most like him, it's Bill Skarsgård who is the son or nephew or whatever of
Stellan
of Baron, and bro got passed up for Austin.
The impression that Austin is doing of Skarsgård is so good because you don't even catch it at first. It takes you a second because you can definitely catch that he's doing a voice. You're like, okay, what the fuck is he doing? And the more he speaks, especially the scenes with Stellan, you're like, motherfucker's just doing.
He's just, my guy has to do a voice.
Yeah.
Our boy, you can only cast him for something if he's doing a different voice.
I'm curious what kind of expectations you guys had going into this movie, not knowing the book. Did you have anything spoiled? Did you have any knowledge of what was to come? Because it's out there obviously, and there's the David Lynch version. But I knew all the main plot beats going into this movie. It was just a matter of how they were going to do it. And I was still surprised because, we'll get to it. I wrote down all the differences, and there's still a lot of stuff that I was genuinely surprised by. But I'm curious, you guys, like, just based off that first movie does such an amazing job introducing you into this world. What did you think of all the twists and turns in the story? How did it all land?
I mean, I don't really know if I had much expectations as far as like story wise for this movie. I think that watching through Denis' other movies, like it prepped me from a tonal aspect of like what I could get into. And like I think Denis is really, really good about this, but it's something that I kind of had to be reminded of, especially watching the first Dune, is that there are narrative shortcuts that he will take sometimes to get across certain things. Like using this movie, for example, we see the first time where they bomb one of the drillers in the harvesters. There we go. And then we see like maybe a cut to like one or two times in the future, but it's like yada yada. We don't need to know. Were they doing this? Did they do this 3 times in a week? Are they doing this over the course of several months? It doesn't matter. That's not important. Same goes with like a more major plot point that happens on later on in the movie. So I think because of that, I was more willing to just kind of let the movie wash over me. What I was surprised about, I will say, is that a lot of times whenever I watch a movie and I'm just like, I just want to experience this. I just want to let this movie happen at me, and then I'll unpack it later
and watch it again.
How much I retained immediately. Because it's so much of this movie is done because he is such a genius visually with telling the story, that he is incredible at blocking and framing these characters within a scene and a sequence that you know exactly what those characters are going to get across in each scene and where everybody is on the chessboard and how those pieces relate to each other.
Yeah, and I think this movie is also a lot more focused on action. The first one was a lot of more dialogue, more scheming, all that politicking, and also just introducing you to the world. I'm still having a hard time picking my preferred, if I like part 1 or part 2 better, because they're both like 10 out of 10s for me. So if I had to pick one, it's kind of hard, but that first one just does such an incredible job at introducing you into this world. And I'm curious to hear like how you guys felt like that continued. Like, did you feel like you had a lot of that out of the way and you could just dive more into the story because you understood the environment? Like, they didn't have to explain, how do the shields work? What is spice? Who are the Harkonnens? Like, that first movie just gets so much of that out of the way where you're prepped, right? But there's still so much more that they add to it. New characters, new wrinkles, all new different dynamics. Even like someone like Lady Jessica, like thinking about how her character changes from the first movie to the second one. There's just so much there of like what you can pick at.
Yeah, that I think that arc is the thing that I most like could not have predicted, just because it's so nuts. You know, where she goes once she drinks that goddamn worm goo.
But it is a thing where like then you go back and watch Dune Part 1 and it's like, oh, the seeds were laid that like she's disobeying the Bene Gesserits and like she produced a male heir whenever like she was not supposed to.
Yeah. So how clear were all those things? Like, were you guys lost with it? Because I feel like there's a lot there of like the stories they're planting with the natives of Arrakis and the actual like genetic breeding that they're doing. It's a lot.
So I don't think that I necessarily like even now like 100% follow everything that's going on there, but I think that it's told clear enough. I think that where I at least, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, the only part that like was a little bit of like a wait, did I miss something here, is later on in the movie, whenever the whole time throughout the movie, Paul's like, he's being the reluctant hero. He doesn't want to actually go to the South because he knows like it's going to lead to genocide and all this kind of stuff. And then like they bomb where some of the Fremen live in like their little mountain town. I don't remember what they're called.
Siege.
The Siege. There you go. Thank you. Bomb them, and then immediately he's just like, well, I have to go drink the water of life. I'm now God. And like there's a big jump that happens there narratively, and a lot of things happen in like a 10-minute span in the movie. That's the only part where it's like Denis got told by Zaslav, we got to get it under 3. Like, that's it. Like, so that's the only part of the movie that I struggled with. Otherwise, I think that's, again, it goes back to the casting, but it's like the benefit of this movie is like the Lady Jessica stuff could get lost if it was a weaker performer, but Rebecca Ferguson's like one of the greatest actors that we have right now. So like, I'm just like, Rebecca Ferguson's crazy and she has tattoos on her face now. Like we're going through it. I was able to follow all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you feel too.
Yeah, I did. I don't think it's not, it doesn't necessarily require like memory in order to comprehend it so much as it does just like stay in the moment when you're watching it. Like, like really, try to soak up everything they're saying.
That's another reason why I like see this movie in a theater. Cause like, I don't know how this would play if you put it on for like your in-laws or for like your extended family at home and you have a cousin who's like on their phone and then periodically looking up. I don't know if this
I heard a lot of people were not super hot on the first Dune because they just fired it up on HBO Max. And then they just didn't like it that much. That's a lot of the takes I heard. I mean, one of the best things for me about Dune Part 2 is that like I feel validated. I feel vindicated. I've been like putting all this hype into this, and it is genuinely being like welcomed as a true classic. This movie is going to go down in history as one of the most important movies of the decade of the 2020s.
Yeah. And
even more so than the first one.
It's making stupid money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't have any competition, but it is a full-on cultural moment. So many TikToks, so many Lisan al-Gaib. And it's a wild story. So I want to get into the details of it.
Yeah, I think that ultimately is what I love the most about it, is that it's like it found a way, and Denis did, because I mean his visual filmmaking, he does so much out there, like technically complicated, gorgeous shit in the movie, but also it's all very legible. To like
extremely clear.
A lot of this movie you could watch without dialogue, you know what I mean? So it plays well internationally. You don't really need to know what they're saying a lot of the time. Like you said, when things start feeling rushed is
rounding into the third act.
Yeah, once he's changing, but that's also, I think, because that's when things start getting very supernatural, I guess you would call it, in a way that like the majority of both of these movies aren't, but like they both dive into it, obviously. Like they'll both, like putting your hand in the box, etc. In the first one, but this one gets way more into the like sort of metaphysical world where he's like, I drank that shit and now I know
I am become God.
Well, yeah. I don't want to spoil too much, but like now I know like what our bloodline is.
I think that's going back to like visually how this is captured. One thing that I think is working really in Denis' favor is that Denis is a master at showing you things that you have never seen before in your life, but feel familiar. So like, for example, the first time that we see Paul in the movie and you see the Harkonnen soldiers under the orange sun take flight and like jump up the mountainside.
Gorgeous visual.
We've seen jetpacks. We've seen space people float around before. I have never seen something shot like that before about somebody racing. Going to the Fade Rautha
the black and white world.
The black and white world on the Harkonnen planet. We've seen Gladiator before. Shit, we've seen black and white fights in a Coliseum before. I have never seen anything close to that in my life. I have never seen anything like that. In the way that contrast is used in that world.
Yeah,
like,
it's so striking.
It's unreal about how you are fully like it looks more normal, and it's not fully black and white. It's only whenever you walk out under the black sun that you actually become illuminated and
another thing that really comes out in that scene and like all over this movie is how effective just like the silhouettes of the costuming are, because like, you know, when they're out doing the gladiator scene, the costuming of those jesters surrounding them and the way they're moving is like genuinely very disturbing if you actually focus on them, when really they're just like side pieces in the scene. And then,
I want that that's gonna be like my Halloween costume for this year. It's gonna be one of those little like black jester creatures.
Those were great.
I don't even, are those people, are those creatures on
like
the
guards
planet? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, they're sort of like they're like rodeo clowns.
Yeah.
Like seriously, they're like, they step in if like they see he's in trouble.
Right.
And then like more so than that, all over the movie, the silhouettes of all these ladies with their box ass heads is so like striking. And I don't know, it's such an easy but like often overlooked effect that if you just via costuming change a silhouette, you're doing like you know, like 50s filmmaking tricks that work really, really well. It's one of those things where you're seeing like every decade of like film history in this. I say that with music a lot, like, oh,
all the influences.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you can hear every decade of rock on this album or whatever. But like, it's rarer with filmmaking, and especially something of this magnitude and this scale. And like, usually movies that are this, you know, this big in scale end up looking just so disgustingly modern and digital. And it's so beautiful. There's
stunning.
I think there is exactly one shot that looked underdone to me, like in the entire movie. It's like an overhead sort of like POV, like you're like in a helicopter during like the big war, and it's about like a 4-second shot where it looks
a lot of armies in the shot.
It looks like 3D renderings. You can see the renderings in a way that's like, I feel like they maybe didn't finish that one, but like the reason it stuck out is because like even the giant scale, like the stuff that usually looks like shit in like the Hobbit movies, for example, where it's just a bunch of dudes fighting, that still looks so good.
It's better. That is the one thing that we still haven't perfected, is like big crowds, because it's like, you know, if you freeze the frame, you see the same guy 2,000 times, but like,
and also your brain tells you that there's this, even though this movie is so constructed, a shot like that is easy for your brain to just be like, not real. But like, I'm looking at something not real.
To Denis' credit, again, like, he knows how to block those shots so that they don't look as fake. Like the one of the shots that has been circulated on Twitter and everything, it's one of like the iconic shots of the movie, is the like top down view of Paul walking through the crowd.
Yeah,
and everything.
That's really good.
Of just like the all white heads, and then you just see him moving through there.
The black coat.
And like, that's something that, again, like, you've seen a version of that before, but I have never seen something like that where like, I like caught my breath in the theater both times whenever seeing this. Like, a
lot of moments like that for me. A lot of stunning, a lot of take your breath away.
Yeah, so it's just the sort of the juxtaposition of that, but with like mainstream pop entertainment, is really, really, really rare.
I think that I think this is a better movie than this, but I think the closest comp that we've had in big blockbuster cinema is probably The Batman, as far as just pure visual,
also shot by Greg Fraser.
Yeah, our boy. That's why we got to give Greg Fraser his flowers.
Yeah,
because I think that he is one of the most underappreciated cinematographers in Hollywood right now.
It's unreal.
It's
a huge part of why.
Win an Oscar for Dune Part 1?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, yeah. I remember him being nominated. I can't remember if he won.
Yep, he did.
Really interesting to think about.
Dune won like 6 Oscars.
Yeah, 2021 was a tough year for the Oscars. It's interesting to think about.
It's going to be an interesting conversation.
It's interesting. Well, I mean, I think that it ended up working kind of in both Oppenheimer and Poor Things' favor that
delay.
Dune moved
cleared
to this
out.
year.
Yeah.
Because I think Dune would be up for costume design, production design,
directing.
score, direction. Although Denis didn't get nominated for Dune Part 1.
We got to make it right.
I think it's happening this year.
We need it.
We'll say it right now. I don't know if this movie will win Best Picture. I don't know about all that, especially because people don't ever want to reward the second movie in the trilogy, even if that's a lot of times the best one. They want to give it to the finale. They want to give it to Return of the King.
So it was the third. Yeah, it was Return that won. Okay.
11 Oscars.
I mean, but both Fellowship and Two Towers won all the technical stuff, and they were nominated for a bunch of things.
Yeah,
this movie is going to be nominated for like at minimum like 5 or 6 Oscars because score, production, costume, all of those technical things.
Yeah, and it's gonna and
cinematography,
and if they're they want young people to give a fuck about all these award shows. Like we didn't even mention. I mean, we're talking about how they bring in all the stuff that the Zoomers love. They're bringing in your Timmys. We didn't even mention the main draw for the Zoomers, Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
Gurney Halleck?
Gurney.
Whoa.
No,
he's got long hair
the
now.
Zoomers are here for Gurney's poetry that he's writing on the set.
Should we do a live reading?
Can you please pull up Josh Brolin's poem that he wrote about Timothée Chalamet and tell me that like
he read it on SNL.
Tell me that they didn't be fucking during the thing. Yeah, he's trying to like
I did not know that.
And he's like, no, I also wrote a poem for Florence Pugh, and his poem for Florence Pugh is like, she's a professional woman, and I appreciate her. And like his for Timmy is just like his flow, his essence.
So this is part of a book that I think is out now. It's like a coffee table book called Dune Exposures.
Nice.
So there's little writings.
Oh my God.
Paired with film photography.
What?
I'm gonna read it. I
think Timmy might have fucked Josh Brolin.
Yeah, can we get some room tone? Let's let Ernie.
I'm going to read it. So imagine you have this coffee table book, Dune Exposures. You flip it open. There's a really like classy black and white image of Timothée Chalamet in his best Paul Atreides garb. Also, actually, I don't know if that's his best Paul Atreides garb. He kind of looks like more like his character in Little Women. A little bit.
Yeah. You know what? It is kind of...
Or maybe this is a photo from part 1 while he was still on Caladan. Anyway, Brolin writes, your face is etched by adolescence. Your cheekbones jump toward what are youth-laden eyes that slide down, a prominent nose, and onto lips of a certain poetry.
Okay, hold on. He's plagiarized. I wrote this poem after I saw Lady Bird.
and the way you hold my gaze makes me fear my own age, because something in me tells me you are going to offer something, and for now, I'm not sure it's going to be something I want anymore.
What? What is that? What does the end of that mean? You're going to offer me something
I don't want anymore.
Hold on, because something in me tells me you're going to offer me something, and for now, I'm not sure it's going to be something I want anymore. Does that mean like he's too old to go gay? But
he really he like yearns for it.
Yeah, he's like,
Timmy, you're still young. You can still still explore yourself. I can't.
After watching Timmy in this movie, I was like, I get it. I get it.
He's a fucking superstar.
This is what happens when you're a Nepo baby, but you're like 50.
Brolin.
Yeah.
You're just stunted.
Brolin actually does have some bars with his poetry. I'll give it to our boy. I don't think that he wrote a poem about Zendaya holding his gaze. I will say that much. But Zendaya is a little bit of a person who I didn't know she had this in her. I think Euphoria is probably the only thing that she's really had to test her chops in.
Yeah.
But Euphoria has become such like an ensemble in a way. And I mean, not to say that Dune is not an ensemble as well, but this is just a whole different, this is a different MO, seeing it on the film stage.
So we are about to crack open a big Pandora's box here, talking about the character of Chani.
About Chani?
So
Zendaya is Chani.
So famously, part 1 sold itself as a Zendaya movie to try to get people to see it. She is in maybe 5 minutes of that movie.
Yeah.
10 tops somewhere.
Yeah, but she's not talking.
She's mostly she's glaring at him, being like,
in his
I
dreams.
don't trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She gets the opening monologue.
Yeah.
She gets a couple like quick flashes as things are ramping up for young Paul. And then at the very end, she shows up and they actually meet for the first time.
Now, you're about to get to her role in the second movie. Initially, got to give it up for Francine Meisler, because this casting job, it is really hard to cast someone who can match Timmy in terms of skinniness.
Yeah. They fit well together. It's like a two puzzle pieces.
They both have no water.
Yeah.
Inside.
So Tom Holland watching this is just like, there's one scene, their like sex scene that isn't, I don't know if it counts as a sex scene or not. They definitely
she lost some water that day. You know what I fucking mean?
They were
listen, my boy Timmy got hydrated.
He's like,
or he hydrated her. I guess that would be more appropriate.
I wonder if the Fremen frown upon like sexual activity.
No, well, they frown upon pulling out.
Right.
100%.
Oh, don't waste the water.
Yeah, don't waste the water.
Well, if you nut inside someone, it doesn't just stay inside them.
It's just like, I absorb it. I suck it back up.
You gotta, and if you're jacking off, buddy, you gotta eat that shit.
Right. No, the Fremen actually like, it is actually very against their beliefs to masturbate. Like unless they have another like receptacle, like they have the big pool water.
People only jack off into like the pool of their ancestors.
To the dead pool.
They need to have another. It's a smaller pool right next to it that also got destroyed during the raid.
I know
they lost so many lives.
I know Stilgar be nutting. You can't tell me he's not.
Lisan al-Gaib.
No, during that one sex scene though between the two of them, like their chemistry together, that and then even before that, their moment that they have on the dune. When magic. The love theme, right before we started potting, you were playing the love theme, and like that is just like
cinema, dude.
I like wanted to stand up and clap right then and there because it was like, we've done it.
That
like,
this is big, sweeping, romantic, epic.
This
cinema.
is fucking Gone with the Wind shit right here. This is like in any era of filmmaking, this just works. What you're seeing is just two people on screen and it's electric.
Yeah, I mean that's why these movies are working, is because they don't get lost in their scale, because they're able to shrink down and be about humans at the end of the day. Right. Because these are really good actors. They're really like they're both delivering like on all fronts.
They're asked to do a lot.
Yeah, they really are.
And going back to your casting point, these two characters, Dune Part 1, to me, the main character of that movie is Arrakis. Like, it is really just introducing you into this world. It's all these little details. Like, that movie is such a masterclass.
It's crazy how much exposition is in that movie. It's insane.
And to not feel it and to be immersed how you are in that movie, that's what really makes it so special for me. But they still had to get these actors right. And so much of the ensemble in Part 1 feels so right. People that we don't see in this movie, like Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa. There's a lot there that just showed the attention to detail with the casting. But when you look at Timmy and Zendaya, Timmy, now we know what this character does. Now we know the reaches of what this character of Paul asks of him. But in Part 1, he also has to be like this kind of meek, kind of wimpy, skinny guy, a boy. He has to read as boy. He has to read as little boy.
Little mouse.
Yeah, exactly.
He's little mouse.
Little desert mouse.
And in this movie, you pick up with him. He just killed Jamis. There's been a change in him, losing his father, losing, everything essentially, and him and his mom surviving with the Fremen. And already he's going through a transformation. So not just from a storytelling perspective, but from a casting perspective, you need that guy who you're going to believe starts out as the skinny little boy and ascends to be this leader. And that's a huge crux of the story of this movie, is he knows the stories, the religious dogma, the stories that have been planted by the Bene Gesserit in Arrakis of a coming Messiah. Mm-hmm. He knows of the Bene Gesserit's plan to genetically engineer a super mind, which is something the book gets into a little bit more. Paul is technically half Mentat, half Bene Gesserit in the book.
Oh, like our boy from the first
Thufir Hawat. Yep, yeah, the guy who's
could not have told you his name. I meant the actor.
Yeah, Stephen McKinley Henderson, I think his name is.
Lady Bird fame.
So obviously in this world, they don't have computers. So the human mind is the computer. So there's these guys named Mentats who are like advanced.
Isn't there a whole thing in the Dune books where it's just like they like destroyed all the computers because of AI.
It's called the Butlerian Jihad. Butlerian Jihad.
We're like about to be there now.
Right. No,
so
we need that.
We're on our way.
The Butlerian Jihad. That was when there was a huge war and they banned computers. But anyway, Paul and Chani represent like the main struggle of this storyline, of these prophecies and these ideas of a savior that is going to bring the people of Arrakis, the Fremen, out of this oppression by the Harkonnens. And Chani, she is very much the voice of our savior should not be an outworlder. I think that's what they say.
Yeah, the outworlder.
Which is what the prophecy says, which is, the machinations of the Bene Gesserit. And Paul thinks that he can use this story to bring about a war to defeat the Harkonnens. There's a lot of layers in this, a lot of layers of motivations, of scheming, of, a lot of lingo to keep track of. But at the core, it is very much just, there's this boy. He's destined to be this great leader. He doesn't really want it, but he might want to use it for his own goal of bringing revenge to the death of his father.
Yeah.
At the hands of the Harkonnens. And if in doing so just happens to free the Fremen and fulfill the prophecy, then that's great.
I think that because it does get dense with so much of like what's happening. But I think that the fact that, and again, we're going to keep harping on the cast and everything, but like the genius of Javier Bardem as Stilgar in this movie. Lisa Nagaib. Like, once again, casting choice. You picked fucking Anton Chigurh and you're like, I'm going to make this the comedic.
Also barely in the first movie. Again, that's one of those other things of just like, they knew that they had to set this up.
Stilgar will be here. He's going to be here in the next one. But like, that is one where it is so expertly deployed, him in this movie, where he is such a comedic character until kind of he's not.
Right. It's kind of tragic.
Leading a jihad that just, it's this whole like everything that's happening is leading up to here. Yeah. And it's used for laughs, but not in like a dialogue way. It's all in the performance. Yeah. It's not in anything. It's not fucking doing the Joss Whedon winking at the camera.
Never.
There's nothing winking about this movie at all.
He's a talented actor too. He knows how to modulate his deliveries and his performance.
Like, it's so fucking well deployed, him in this movie, because you need him to like lull people into the myth of Paul Atreides, while also you have of Muad'Dib, of the Kwisatz Haderach, of all of that. Like, while you also need Zendaya there being just like, we need to kill the outsiders and everything. So like, let us rule ourselves. It's these two factions are happening at the same time, and you don't even necessarily realize that they're opposing factions because it feels like they're on the same side until they aren't.
This is a big change from the book that I love. Chani is not combative in the book. Chani is very much on board with everything that's going on. At the very end of Dune, the book, Chani is standing right by her man's side, knowing full well that he's going to marry Princess Irulan. And she's just like, you know what? I'm here.
Me wonder how much Dune Messiah movie versus book will vary from each other. Because at the end of this, they are very much opposed.
Chani is very much not on board with everything that goes down at the end of this movie.
I mean, that's great for the storytelling of the movie. It needs that source of tension.
And for Zendaya to put in a fucking incredible performance that carries pretty much the soul of the story.
Well, yeah, it creates like a human arc that wasn't there. So that's huge. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, compared to the book, it sounds like Paul is more just generally out for vengeance in the book. In the movie, it's not really coming into play until Gurney comes and like reminds him. And then even more so than that, it's just when he drinks that worm juice, like it's over. Like how is that the case in the book? Does it like flip him that quickly? Because that is like a hard turn for our boy Paul.
The main difference is that throughout the entire book, you are very much deep into Paul's perspective. So you're seeing what he's seeing. And a lot of it is he is very detached from reality. His mind, because he's tripping on spice the whole time, he's like experiencing alternate futures, seeing these crazy visions constantly. Like he is very overwhelmed by the visions that he's getting from the spice. So by the time he drinks the water of life and is able to focus all of that and apply it in a way that feels like he has some type of control over it and isn't just like randomly his head just kind of spinning through possibilities. That's the scene where he's like, I see a narrow way through. And that's the point in the movie where it really does feel like we pull away from Paul's perspective pretty hard. You know, we feel like what is going on with this guy? Like he's definitely something has changed.
Yeah, and
in the book, it's kind of like that, but the very end of the book, all the events play out really, really fast. And Frank Herbert, funny enough, has talked about how he wanted the book to have a coital rhythm, where it starts out very, very slow. The first 100 pages are very tough to get through. And
bro he just needed to jack
My
off.
brother just needed a nut.
And he made it so that as the book progresses, like it speeds up to the point where it reaches an epic climax and it just ends. That's really the feeling of Dune, is you go from this incredibly drawn out first half to then this insane ramp up to the finish line. I think they did a pretty good job of adapting that feeling into the movie without making it too jarring. I mean, one of the complaints, if valid complaint, is the pacing, which you brought up. But some of these specific plot points, like the water of life, giving him this clarity, that's something that in the book is just more elaborated on, because you're in his perspective even more so than you are in these movies.
So I am curious. Have you seen David Lynch's Dune?
Yes.
Okay. In that movie, because it's just a single film, is Paul Atreides just all good all the time? Is that kind of where we land with it? Is that there's no complexity whatsoever with this character?
That's one of the big things, is when you read the book Dune, you don't think like Paul Atreides is a bad person. You don't really think he is the villain of the story. It's very subdued. It's very much like,
so in that way, like Dune Part 2 is much more obvious by the end of it. It's like, I don't think I trust this guy.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you have a little bit of a queasy feeling because you know a holy war has begun. So you start thinking like, well, what did we just do? In your head. What did we just do here to end up at this point where this war breaks out? But as far as the character of Paul goes, you're not really. I think the extent of it is that he is becoming so detached from reality that you do feel like there is a tiny little bit of loss of empathy. It's not very overt. It's you really have to like be paying attention to grab onto it, but it does feel like him constantly not being in reality, but in his mind, jumping through time and space, causes him to sort of lose touch with the present moment.
Which that does make sense. If you drink the water of life and you have the knowledge of every mother of every Bene Gesserit who has ever lived, then I would kind of like not give a shit about like the day and day.
So one of the genius things that this movie does is that I think it makes it so incredibly obvious. I am so shocked.
So many people are just not missing it. So many people were like, yo, Team Paul, let's go. Our boy, Holy War.
Apparently, like, the people just really need to be spoon-fed with this. But to me, one of the genius things about this movie is how clearly it wants you to know that Paul is not a good person. That he he has taken advantage of his circumstance to grab onto power and assert himself in a way that's even more violent and costly than anyone could have imagined. And I think that Dune is about a lot of things, but I think in a big way it is about what power is and what it does to people, and whether or not it attracts the corruptible or if it just corrupts people. I think that's one of the big ideas of this story. Is it's just trying to get you to interrogate, like, why do these things happen? Why do they always continue to happen in history? Why do these patterns repeat? And why? And how does it affect the people that lead them and that create these things in the first place?
That right there, what you just said is like, I think that is well summarized of like what I meant about why I can see why Denis was initially drawn to this project to begin with, because looking at this whole idea of pattern and control and patterns and repeating themselves, that's Denis' entire filmography, like in a nutshell of everything, most succinctly distilled down in a film like Enemy, which is like absolute masterpiece, but that is about trying to harness control and then the vices of man that continue to compound and repeat themselves over and over again.
I think I might have gotten something wrong in my comparison to the book. I'm trying to fact check myself. Because the whole reason why the war breaks out at the end of the movie is because all the houses don't accept his claim to the throne. Mm-hmm. And he goes out to fight them. I don't know if that's what happens in the book now that I'm remembering it. But there are some things in my list that I did want to talk about, like going back to the Chani character, the way she embodies the idea of opposing the fundamentalists, the people that want to give themselves over to this prophecy. That's something that's very different from the book. That you don't really get a sense of dimensionality of the Fremen people in the novel. They're all just kind of...
There isn't North Fremen and South Fremen.
Not really. Okay. No. They're very...
It's a really smart addition then.
They're very easily to manipulate. Like there's long stretches of the book of Lady Jessica just being able to get these people to do whatever she wants. She is their reverend mother, and she just is able to flex every scenario to benefit this prophecy of her son becoming true. Adding that dimensionality in this movie of the Fremen being torn and having this inner discussion of whether or not
having the Zoomers of Fremen, they're just like, nah, man, we don't believe in religion. This. Yeah,
that's a really
it's a very modern idea to have in there.
Right,
it's very cool.
And that makes Chani the kind of the main character of the story, because she's so aware of all of the ways in which this prophecy is bad and wrong.
And you flip to her perspective in the third act of the movie.
A couple other differences I had written down. Famously in the David Lynch movie, there's a creepy little baby girl, a little baby monster girl. That is Aaliyah. That is the Anya Taylor-Joy character that we see a future vision of in Dune Part 2. In the novel and in the Dune in the Lynch adaptation, there is a time jump. There's a significant time jump, and Jessica has given birth to this child. The time jump in here is negligent, right? She goes from being newly pregnant to now a couple months pregnant, maybe halfway through her pregnancy. You can see she's starting to show. It's years in the book. And Chani and Paul actually have their own child, Leto Jr., who they wisely just took out of this. Denis did a lot of great adaptation choices.
As I was leaving the theater, there were some like book heads, like some real absolute fucking dorks walking in front of me.
Were they displeased?
One of them, the others were like, dude, it's a movie. They had to change some stuff. But yeah,
he's like, where's Leto Jr.?
See, no, yeah, he was like, but what about their kid? Like, he was like really upset about that. But that's a lot.
You gotta calm down.
Like
time jumps
a lot of the art of adapting is knowing what, it's I mean, it's taking literally the phrase like you got to kill your children. Like you got to know which of your babies to knock out. And it works really well.
In the case of the Iron Claw, it's literally which one of your babies do you take out?
Facts. Generally speaking, both of these movies do a really good job. And I don't, the books may or may not be like this. I mean, clearly, obviously the books have way more territory to add more characters, but there's really, they keep the main casts pared super down in both of these. We lost a good amount of people in the first movie just by dying.
No Momoa, no Isaac.
Yeah. And so even though we're introduced to a lot of new people, it doesn't feel overwhelming in this movie. Like it's kept to maybe like 15 like memorable parts, but then the world still feels huge because you're seeing like a billion people.
And it's good. It's
very
good
important
at placing them in different places. Like, there is a sprawling cast, but like Christopher Walken and Florence Pugh are like way over here, and Lady Jessica is here for a little bit, but then she's kind of on the other side of the planet over here, and we'll flash forward to like catch up. But mostly we're going to be right over here, and it does do a good job of laying out where the chess pieces are, so it's not confusing or jarring. But we can follow our main boy Paul without any kind of questions.
Yeah, and exactly. There are multiple arcs going on multiple planets, and it all makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't feel like there are too many people involved. And that's like really, really tough to do. Like a movie of this scale I think that has to be a main ingredient of it. And speaking of Lord of the Rings, that was another thing that those movies did well, is they distilled the main parts to like a very digestible group of characters, even though we're still seeing the amount of people who populate the world. Right. Like that's a huge, huge distinction.
And it maintains the soul of the story. Again, like just all of these ideas, all of these themes of like religion and how it can be weaponized, and the dangers of putting all of your trust and faith into a charismatic leader like Paul Atreides that's just sweeping everyone off their feet. Like these are very clear cut core building blocks of the story of Dune, and you can make any choices you want as long as you continue to keep those intact. And that's what Denis does. I mean, he clearly loves this story, loves this world. He doesn't want to sacrifice everything that Herbert wanted to say, everything that makes this such a special story that continues to hold so much value, even as we see today all the atrocities and genocides happening in the world. Like you can't help but think about Israel and Gaza at the end of this movie.
Yeah,
seeing the oppressed people take charge against their oppressors is something you cannot ignore watching this movie in 2020.
We're gonna have like a list of like 400 Hollywood losers
signing a letter.
Yeah,
they're just like, I side.
That was the funniest like nothing story ever. It's like a bunch of
Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah, a bunch of absolute nobodies despise Jonathan Glazer now for his very like milquetoast, like kind of down the middle speech where he just he didn't say anything radical in that speech.
Yeah, it was like, if anything, I mean, honestly, it was great as far as acceptance speeches go at the Oscars. They get massive views. And at the moment, as we were watching it, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, is somebody saying something about this? But yeah, big winner of that is Noah Baumbach, because his ex-wife, Jennifer Jason Leigh, signed it. And he cheated on Jennifer Jason Leigh to get with Greta Gerwig. Woo! So good job, Noah. You picked him right. Man, we talked about it before, but I do, speaking of Oscars and everything, like what the awards view might end up looking like for something like this, I could legitimately see a case for either Rebecca Ferguson or Javier Bardem trying to campaign for a supporting role, depending on what those fields look like at the end of the year. If it is a weaker field, I could see one of them getting a nomination, because both of them are like super beloved actors. They're people that everybody takes seriously. They're incredible in the movie, but also like there is the whole like people don't want to stomach the idea of we give a science fiction lead character a best supporting actor or best lead actor for as stupid and arbitrary and old fashioned as it is, I could see one of them trying to make a campaign.
I'd love it. I'd love for Rebecca Ferguson to get something. She's really, really effective in the movie. Like, she's scary. Like, she's truly frightening. What about something for the fetus?
For the fetus?
Yeah.
Best fetus award? We might have to make a new Wabami category for best unborn fetus.
Facts. Although I will say I was in the I burned through the entire Dan Schneider docuseries.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a couple of days ago.
I've actually heard that's pretty good. The one that's the
Flight on the
one
set.
That's on.
It's very well done.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes places you do not think it's going to go in terms of who is coming out and saying what. Like, some really huge information is revealed to the public for the first time. That said, it did remind me of the famous All That character called Lil Fetus, which I did used to love. I thought it was their little rapper who was a fetus.
There are so many points in this movie that made me say, like, let's fucking go. Like, anytime some kind of new crazy thing is revealed that I kind of knew was going to happen because of the book,
when
but
you
also
saw Lady
like
Jessica
really
going, being like, "We'll take care of the weak ones first," and like looking ominously, you're like, "Yeah, let's plant some misinformation."
One of the main things was the water extraction devices that they use at the very beginning.
That shit's
to
sick.
Suck out all the water, because I was expecting that in the first movie. I wanted to see that. And they saved it for the second one. I was like, okay.
Well, that's another huge, like, a lot of the things that I'm just sort of, we're not even touching on because we're taking them for granted because we saw them in the first one. You know what I mean? But like the visualization of all technology in this movie,
the Omnithopters are still so sick. It's so fucking cool.
Piece of tech is so dope.
Yeah.
And the sound,
the rocket launcher,
the sound design that accompanies them, it's all so well thought out.
It's all perfect.
And beautiful. And yeah, it's like beyond words. That's why it's almost like I said about, Spider-Verse Part 2, like the visually and like technically we are like several standard deviations beyond what like good usually
it's a
means.
Huge step.
Yeah. Like we're at like that, like the end of whatever that's called.
Would you guys, I have a question for you. If you could have a pet, like it would stay small, a pet baby Shai-Hulud, would you have one in your home?
Like the size of the one that the water of life was extracted from?
That thing could do some damage. That's like having a big python that like, in your house.
Yeah. So like, would you have a little Shai-Hulud running around?
I would love it. I would definitely not drown it.
Yeah, you would not. He would not.
I would keep it in the sand.
Yeah.
Let it do its thing.
You wouldn't
let
disturb.
It grow into
you would
a
never
big
take
boy.
it. Would you guys drink the water of life?
I mean, if it's going to make me remember all the memories of all my ancestors, probably not. That sounds kind of horrible.
It looked kind of tasty, didn't it?
I just don't want all that. I don't want all that knowledge.
So it's worm blood?
Yeah.
It's the blood.
It's like worm
blood
juice.
Yeah, we don't like to think about which fluid it is specifically. It's definitely coming from the worm. But just if you just saw that sitting there in a cup at a party, somebody's like pouring it out of like a fucking Jamba Juice, a jungle juice thing.
Yeah.
You take a little sip of that.
Yeah, it looks like Pedialyte. I drink that.
That's like, it's like thicker than Pedialyte. Apparently, it's isn't it a certain type of tequila or vodka or something
that they
like
use
that?
for real? Oh, I didn't know.
They did not make them drink vodka.
No,
what?
So
I need to look up. I think Rebecca Ferguson said something about this in like an interview about what they used. I don't know if they actually used it or if they used it as inspiration.
They didn't give them alcohol.
I mean, who knows? Denis just getting them fucked up out there.
So we need to talk more about the worms, the big worms.
Yeah.
There is a scene in this movie in which Paul learns to ride a worm,
grandfather worm,
big worm. And it is cinema.
Yeah.
It is fucking cinema. I love the charm of the Lynch movie, seeing Kyle MacLachlan ride a sandworm in that movie. There's like a neat little charm there where you can definitely tell that he's just standing on a stage and there's some movement behind him and there's a great guitar riff by Toto powering him through.
Mm-hmm.
But here we get a flurry of sand and chaos and you don't know what the fuck is going on. There's all these crazy noises and you see the rush of trying to hang on to this giant fucking worm.
Yeah, and then even
devices.
I mean, and it's very well paced out, so you get the lead up where like when it's coming, you're like, oh Christ, this is a grandfather.
It's a big one.
We're in sort of uncharted territory, I feel, here, where in a movie like this that is like so big in scale, very effects heavy shots and sequences like this are going to hold up. Like, it's not going to get much better than this cinematically. We haven't really. There are like outliers over time where like, some movies were just way ahead and like very economical with the effect shots that they used, and they like still look great. But like, this is gonna look great in 20 years. Like, it's just it's always going to work.
A lot of it was shot for real. They really went out there in the desert and grabbed a ton of stuff.
Worms.
Did you see they had a worm crew? Like, it was just part of the crew that was on there that would just be like, they would be done for the day, like doing a bunch of stuff. And then they would just grab like a few actors and be like, all right.
Worm riding stuff.
Yeah, let's come in. Rebecca, come in here. We're going to do some worm riding stuff and just like do that for like a few, like an hour.
Would you ride the worm?
Absolutely, I would ride the worm.
It looks a little too crazy.
The thing is, I'm a little bit of a thrill seeker.
I would if I was like being...
I'd pop a couple Dramamine first.
If I was being like held on the worm in like a big nice cornucopia, the way that Jessica is when she's getting taken to the south.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
I would ride on. I would like throw the boys out there and just really like saddle a bit.
I'm not him.
Let me also tell you right now, I did fact check, and this is correct. They used Cossaco vodka Mora Azul, which was suggested by Rebecca Ferguson the day before.
I love her
shooting
our queen
for the Water of Life scenes.
She's the best.
So our king, Rebecca Ferguson, give her an Oscar nomination just because of that queen move to just be like, hey, I've seen blue vodka before. What if we use that?
She's fantastic in this movie. The Jessica character is very, very prevalent in the novel. Like, she's kind of the main character of Dune, just because Paul is just
he's a boy,
and a lot of things are happening to him.
Yeah.
Jessica is very much like the driver of
she's the puppet
agency.
master.
Yeah, and there are so many stretches of the novel that are from her perspective. I thought we got a lot of great Rebecca Ferguson stuff in part one. This is nutso what she does. She pops the fuck off in this role. It's so good. It's so fun to watch.
She's so good.
I'm really, I do have questions about like, because of Rebecca Ferguson's flip, obviously she has had like some like intentions of trying to make her own,
Kwisatz Haderach. She was supposed to. The Reverend Mother said that she was supposed to give birth to a daughter,
right? Who
would then give birth to Fade Routha's child, and that would be the Kwisatz Haderach,
right? And she said, "Nah, fuck them Harkonnens."
She said, "I love my Duke Leto Atreides. He wants a son.
Mm-hmm.
I will give him a son.
I'll give birth to a son who will attract more men than any woman ever could."
It also. It also makes sense too, knowing that her father is Baron Harkonnen.
My God, yes.
So also she's probably just like, hey, the Harkonnens are fucking crazy. I'm not having my daughter marry back into this family because they're so fucked. So that all makes sense. That all tracks for me. I do want to know like how much of starting a jihad was her idea versus baby Anya Taylor-Joy, because it feels like the baby is like talking to her, talking through her. And like, that's when she starts getting like fucking feral eyes, like going crazy. It's just like, this is what the baby wants. This is what they need. And like, I know that this is probably beyond the first book that you've read, but I'm interested to see that in the next movie. No, like, is Anya Taylor-Joy like the real puppet master here behind all of this, or what
I think it remains to be seen. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if I'm gonna dive into Messiah before the movie comes out. Aaliyah is not a huge part of the story. She kind of just comes in at the end, and she's actually the one that kills Baron Harkonnen. And the Reverend Mother calls her an abomination. So when she calls Timmy an abomination, that's like a little wink and a callback to the
abomination.
Yeah, that entire final sequence the fight with Feyd-Rautha, all those people in the room there waiting to see how it's going to turn out. Timmy like really coming hot off of the big speech that he gives.
Man,
there's so much riding on that scene that the first time I saw the movie, I kind of felt it not hit as good as I was expecting it to, because it was just like, it's the big climax of the movie. It's the big final fight. It's the may thy knife chip and shatter. It's all these things. The second time, it definitely hit me a lot more, just because I could focus in on all the little details of the performances happening.
Every cut to a different character and what is going through their brain during that sequence.
Exactly. And all the things that have been set up over the course of 2 movies, of all the different political allegiances of all these different people, and, their personal desires too, because Chani, when she refuses to bow, she's not just doing that because she's upset that he chose Florence Pugh. She's doing that because she knows the consequences, the massive consequences of what are about to happen. It's not just like, I'm mad that my boyfriend chose someone else. Right. No, she is very aware of what's about to go down and the power that this guy is about to assert. So that scene really, really was kind of a big question mark of how effective it would be. And I'm glad that they nailed it. I'm glad that they nailed like every major moment, even the war, which I wasn't expecting that much from because it's not a huge part of the book, but seeing the sandworms emerge from the dust storm, from the sandstorm, is going to be one of those forever iconic visuals.
But again, like, it's the movie's smart because as fun as it can be in the moment to have Avengers Endgame, where you have all of your friends there and they're having a long, prolonged battle sequence, especially at home, those don't hold up super great. And like, what does hold up great at home is small group of actual actors in a
character moments.
Not to mention the mirroring between like how the end of Dune Part 1 ends with, you have all this grandiosity and then it just ends with a small little knife fight. And then we get that again in Part 2. That I really love that, for exactly what you're talking about, that like every single cut to a different character, you can see the game of chess that's being played in their head of just like, we're watching these two go at each other. And I have to think about how this affects me and my board. Like, what is my next move going to be from here?
I saw some confusion out there with some of the revelations in the story, like even something that's set up in the first movie, like the visions of Jamis in the desert, right? And just thinking like, what's going on there? Why is he seeing Jamis like be a friend to him and teach him the ways to ride the worm if he's just going to kill him? I think that it's just a matter of the different visions that Paul is seeing, all the different possibilities of all the different futures. And I think one of the key ones is the vision that he keeps seeing of himself getting stabbed. That's a recurring image in the first movie where he sees himself essentially die, bleeding out from a knife wound. And I love how that pays off at the end of Part 2, where he actually does get stabbed by Feyd-Rautha, right? So it forces you to start clicking in a lot of these disparate setups in the form of visions that Paul is having and the ways in which they actually seem to realize. Another one is the vision that he has of himself in the actual battle in Part 1. And you see him fight some guys.
And then how that's actually Chani.
It's actually Chani, right? That's another example. Yeah. Which is, I love the way that's mirrored and
this happens in every episode of That's So Raven.
Right. Yeah. It's not quite right.
It's never exactly what she thinks.
Did they talk about that in the Quiet on Set?
No, That's So Raven. It's really just Nickelodeon is just taking a beating in this fucking thing.
I'm sure.
My God.
Because I
was hoping that they would, if anything, that they would talk about the costume designer for Cheetah Girls 2 would talk about what the fuck they were thinking with the way they costume designed Raven Simone. That's what I want to hear.
That'd be great.
Give me a whole pod on that. No, I did want to ask one thing about Jamis since you brought him up, because we get that moment early on where, again, I'm kind of confused about timelines in this movie and like how long something takes, where Timmy first gets over to the Siege and he's told like you have to cross the desert. You have to cross the desert and then come back to like prove that you're worthy or whatever. And Stilgar tells him like, don't listen to the desert spirits. Yeah. The desert spirits will mislead you. And he sees Jamis, or like he thinks Jamis. He thinks that it's Jamis. Then we actually talk to Jamis later on, and Jamis is the one who's like, you should go south. You should become that. But he's told earlier on, don't listen to the desert spirits, I think. So that's like a whole other thing to kind of unpack of like, was the spirits of the desert just like his own like desire for control deep inside of him projected out onto Jamis, so he's viewing as this like spirit guide for him for the desert?
No, I think there's a bunch of different ways to interpret that. It could be a vision of an alternate future, of an alternate Jamis, or it could definitely be a djinn of the desert, a desert spirit that is just, scheming and conniving to get the prophecy to be fulfilled. I mean, that's why this story really starts to accelerate so quickly at the end, because it sets up the idea of these fundamentalists already being fully prepped for him. Like the stage has been set in the South, so that as soon as he arrives, these people have been waiting for him. They are ready to go. And again, I think that's one of the key ideas of the story, is the danger of that, the danger of how quickly people can give themselves over to these ideas. And I think the Stilgar character is a huge part of that. To go from someone who is very much a leader of his people, a protector of his people, and to see him over the course of this movie just almost entirely lose that and become this devout follower of Muad'Dib Usul, Paul Muad'Dib Usul, Lisan al-Gaib. And it's tragic. It's tragic because he has that line at the end where he's like, I don't care if you believe, I believe. He is running into the war at the end of this movie. He is charging into battle. And it's so sad. The ending of this movie is so incredibly sad, where I just don't understand how someone could watch this and think that it has a hopeful, heroic ending.
Even the score itself is like the love theme coming back. It doesn't play as triumphant. It plays more as like melancholic.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, it's a media literacy thing, but yeah, it's
I read what you want to out of it based on movies and like your idea of art going into it. If you're just like, listen, I spent 2 movies with this guy, he's got to be the hero.
Yeah,
he's the biggest face on the poster.
Why would I question him now? He's the main guy.
He's the whitest guy. He must be.
He looks just like me. He's got to be good.
White people have never gone to another place and done bad things there. They're always there to help out.
Yeah.
Big Loser.
Especially not when there's a like oil parallel going on here in this world. Is spice closer to oil or mushrooms?
Well, it's also literally like spice like 1,000 years ago.
I guess it's just all.
It is the most valuable substance in the galaxy because it allows for interstellar space travel.
Will we get the
guild navigators?
The guild navigators in Messiah.
I gotta pull this up again.
David Lynch was just like, guys, don't worry, I'll make guild navigators in here.
David Lynch took it upon himself to design the guild navigator.
Drew, do you know what a guild navigator is?
This is a screen cap from the 1984 film Dune, directed by David Lynch.
What is that?
What's their whole thing? What's the guild navigator?
That looks like a cowhide, like stretched out. What is it?
So in the books, Frank Herbert describes the Spacing Guild as incredibly deformed humanoids that are never seen. And in the first movie, we may actually get the closest glimpse to them. The guys with the orange helmets, the orange visor, like the white suits that come to the procession to announce that House Atreides is taking over Arrakis.
Okay.
Those are supposed to be the Spacing Guild. We never really see them, but essentially they are deformed because they have huffed so much fucking spice nonstop for generations. So each generation is more and more horribly deformed.
It's like whenever you get into the K-hole, basically.
Right. And Lynch, he was like, okay, I'm going to show you guys like what I think these guys look like. And that's what he did. I was hoping that Denis would have some kind of answer to this. He just avoids it entirely. There's a lot of things from the first movie that he drops. Like, we don't really see shields being used.
Listen, we're trying to sell a movie here. So in the next one, the Guild Navigator will be played by Evan Peters.
Yeah, you are right. Shields, that's like shields are kind of a big thing. And in the first one, they're like, well, you can't deploy shields because then the worms come.
Right.
So I guess they just get away with never using shields.
Forget about the shields. Like, it's also kind of a weird visual.
Why even have proposed shields in the first place as a thing? I know that Frank Herbert put it in there, but like it is, yeah.
He put a lot of weird shit in there.
I will say, the best thing with shields in this movie is the first time that they are destroying the harvester and they have to time out shooting the missile at the
when it's firing,
the Omnithopter or whatever it is, whenever it's firing at them, and the visualization of the bullet going slowly through the shield and then piercing through.
It also, cool. This movie was just begging to have like a PS2 game adaptation of it.
God, how sick would that be?
Like the scene when Timmy and Zendaya are having to hide in the shadow of the legs of that fucking thing.
Oh, that would be so fun.
I wanted to play that level so bad. It was reminding me so much of like the AT-AT levels in, you know, the old Star Wars game.
Yeah.
This movie has a lot of really great set pieces. I think that it really outdoes itself compared to the first one. The first one has a really great texture to it. You know, there's a tangibility to the detail, which this movie has it as well. But this movie, it really blows out the scope of these major set pieces.
Yeah, like the stuff going on in the world is way crazier here. Like, yeah, it's just more and more intense and more visually ambitious. It's crazy.
Lee was a little bit overwhelmed. She said that she doesn't think she liked IMAX too much, just because
it's too loud. Too much of it.
It's a little relentless for some people.
I have heard that complaint about the first Dune as well, where it's just like, especially if people talk about the voice and things like that, like it was like too loud. Let me tell you. Not
Shit
too loud
rocks.
For me. Not too loud for me.
It pops so good.
And Dune Part 1 is like one of my favorite 4K remasters that they've had, not just visually, but the sound with surround sound.
Oof.
Crank that shit so loud, but like when they use the voice, it vibrates the walls in your house a little bit. And you know, might be a lot for some people. I would ask, did you play the Dune game?
I was going to mention that. So shout out to friend of the pod, Brett. We played Dune Spice Wars, which is a real-time strategy game.
Okay.
Where you have to manage, you know, it's kind of like an Age of Empires type thing.
Are you like a Harkonnen, like pre?
Yeah, you can do Arrakis, you can do Harkonnen, you can do Fremen.
Okay.
I think the Imperials is the fourth one. We only played it one time. It was really good. Might jump back in it again. They're actually doing another Dune game called Dune Awakening.
That's the survival one.
Yeah,
right?
it's an MMORPG, like survival style. We'll see. You know, we'll see. Again, like the thing about Dune is that it's not necessarily the most action packed.
Well, also like that makes it even, if people are confused now about like maybe Paul Atreides isn't a good guy, having people play as Paul Atreides is really not. People don't get The Last of Us.
You didn't get the Fortnite skin?
Yeah,
the Paul and Chani Fortnite skin.
That'd be great. That'd be really sick.
There was also a Call of Duty tie-in. Apparently, you could have a full like Harkonnen armor in the new Call of Duty.
That sucks so hard.
Yeah. There was also
Warner's like we gotta keep getting them checks.
There's also a Microsoft simulator, a flight simulator tie-in where you fly around Arrakis in Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Well, it's a lot of sand, right?
Yeah.
How interesting is that? I feel like there's better worlds that you could fly
I mean, maybe
in.
you see a worm in the distance. You can fly over to it and see it kind of.
You just
of all the worlds to make, Arrakis in a flight simulators doesn't seem like the most engaging. There's better.
I'm trying to find this tweet that I think is the funniest tweet I've ever seen in my life.
What did you guys think of some of the others actors we haven't brought up yet, like Léa Seydoux as
loveliest
Lady Fenring?
Love her in anything whenever she pops up. So it's great seeing her in here. She like that whole. This movie is so smart about the way that it introduces Austin Butler's character, where it's like, we're just going to carve out like 20 minutes, 15 minutes here for you.
We're not going to be cutting back and forth.
Yeah, it's just going to be like, we're going to go to this world for a bit, introduce them, and then we'll come back to our boys in the desert.
I found the tweet. It doesn't have to do with Dune, but it's about like how every movie used to have like a legit PS2 game attached to it. The 2000s were so great because every movie inexplicably had a game. Imagine today watching The Holdovers and loading up Holdovers New England SmackDown on PS2.
They're just fighting each other.
And it's actually Paul Giamatti doing the voiceover, and he's saying, "You better not hold the X button to sprint."
Okay, so
honestly, that was a better time. We should go back then.
Maybe there's like a small like open world component where you could run around the school. Yeah, you can explore the school around.
It's like open world, but not really.
It's just the building and like the grounds outside. You collect power ups and you try not to smell like fish. There's like a smell a fish meter that you have to try to keep down.
You try to fuck.
Man, the Zone of Interest PS2 game would go hard.
Yeah, you just sit there and you just smoke and enjoy the life in the garden.
It's like, shit, I'm getting moved to a new town. I'm gonna be away from my wife and kids.
Wait, the tweet you posted of the Zone of Interest was really good, where the guy was like, first of all, where did they go?
Holy shit.
And second of all, where are they?
Oh my God. That fucking guy. Wait, because that's from an actual. Well, no, that's from an actual review.
He's making fun of
because
someone else.
CNN very conveniently republished an opinion critique of the movie that it initially published when the movie came out.
Which, brother, you should have never published that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
CNN. Absolutely wretched critic who's like, it feels like he's deliberately misreading the movie, where like he's being like, like some of the movie doesn't even make sense. Like when he finds a jawbone in the river, I only understood that because I had read previously about how like jawbones were being found in rivers near concentration camps.
But other people wouldn't know what's going on.
That was from a human. I didn't know. Oh, that dead body in there.
Yeah, I cannot fathom the idea of not understanding what's going on there. And then the tweet that I sent you guys was someone being like, a lot of problems with Zone of Interest. Like when the characters move off the screen, like where do they go?
I'm trying to.
These are the same people who are just like, Paul Atreides. I don't know. I don't really see any problems here. We spent the whole movie with him. Why would I be questioning him? I don't.
He's so excited.
So what? You're gonna make a movie about somebody that I don't like? Why would you do that? Why would I watch the movie then?
Okay, I found it. It's at JI _ and then
I love this guy,
Ds.
Brooks Otterlake. I've followed this guy for years.
The Zone of Interest was confusing to me. People walk out of frame and it's like, okay, first of all, where do they go? And secondly, and I guess this is sort of a related question, where are they? Are they somewhere? That's so good.
He's awesome.
Oh man.
Shout out to Absolute King Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah,
like he's had a tough couple weeks since the Oscars.
No, our boy stays winning. Let him be up here. Like, just fuck all these Zionists out there. Like, it's let our boy keep winning out there.
No one else said shit during the fucking Oscars about anything.
And you could tell in the time, like, if you look, he's like shaking on stage to actually get it out because he knows that he is in a room of people and a lot of them are not going to agree with the words that he is going to say.
But by the way, good Oscars.
Hey,
I thought it was a really good Oscars.
Yeah. I'm just Ken.
I
fucking killed.
I think we're ready to mix it up from Kimmel.
Mulaney's the pick, right?
It's gonna be Mulaney. Yeah, I guess we never talked about the Oscars. I thought it was a really good ceremony. Not really any like terrible bits throughout.
Even the John Cena one was pretty funny.
The John Cena one's great.
Yeah,
I actually thought that was like really
landed
funny.
Yeah, that landed really well.
Yeah, I thought it worked. I'm Just Ken is going to be like
legendary.
One of the best Oscar moments in
that is an all timer.
Yeah,
that was everyone, the whole production.
It is kind of suck that it's like they performed I'm Just Ken and then fucking we give it to the Billie Eilish song for best original song, and also that's the only Barbie win. It sucks, but whatever.
So my question about the hosting is like, is there any incentive from ABC to move on from Kimmel because it's free It's free advertising for Kimmel.
He did love to say new Abbott Elementary coming up right after the broadcast. He did say that about 6 times.
Well, and it's a plug for his
man.
It's a plug for his show. Like he has, constantly since it began, the third most popular late night show. And this is just a free chance for people. It's never a huge L for Kimmel when he hosts it. Yeah. Like everyone's always like, Kimmel did all right. Yeah.
He is the most steady ship that you can possibly have, which especially like, remember when there was no host? And
that was awful
for 2 years.
Or they did the three ladies,
the 3 hosts, and then fucking the slap happened, and Amy Schumer has to just be like, "Oh, did I miss something?" Like, because there like isn't a steady hand behind the
Yikes.
ship. That was weird. We need somebody out there, and like that's my one hesitation with Mulaney. I think Mulaney would actually do great. He did awesome in the Governor's Ball this year. He's done the Indie Spirit Awards before that. I think he has it, but it's very different hosting the Academy Awards. And like, I love Mulaney more than anything. I don't want Mulaney to make it about himself.
Right.
I don't want him to just like keep going up there and like wanting to go out and be like,
He loves movies though.
Dune Part 2.
He's very knowledgeable. The bit he did about Field of Dreams.
That was fucking incredible. That was, again, like that's right there with the I'm Just Ken for the best moment of the night.
Lots of love for Poor Things. Love to see it. I did not expect it to win 4 Oscars when we did our predictions. I said that it was probably going to go home empty-handed. It got 4 Oscars, including Best Actress. Emma Stone gave probably the best performance of the year. So.
Yeah, the parallels between her being in The Curse.
Yeah.
And now taking not actually stealing it, but the
depriving
of depriving an Oscar from a Native woman.
Yeah, after being in The Curse that is insane.
Well, you could see the look of horror on her face as they called her, and like,
but she
honestly great acceptance speech.
Yeah,
she did exactly the thing where she's like, Lily, I'm sorry, my bad.
I'm too good.
Yeah.
I'm too fucking talented.
That did kind of get lost in the moment, but Emma Stone's now fully on like the Meryl Streep, Frances McDormand kind of like
the actor of her generation.
I think that she'll get Audrey Hepburn of like she could win 4 or 5 Best Actress Oscars.
Let's go.
I mean, to tie back to Dune, I think that there's definitely a shift happening right now of like movie stars, right? Mm-hmm. There's been a drought for the longest time where it felt like we needed to look back at our toms, to keep that flag flying of the movie star in the age of TikTok and split attention spans. But it really does seem like we are crowning a new class of movie stars. And it feels like Dune 2 is the linchpin of that. I had a couple like things to talk about before as we close out. I want to talk about like where this movie fits into the Denis filmography. Like if you guys have any bellwether of where it might land for you. I also have a couple of like the best sequels of all time. Like the best like number 2 part 2s of all time is another conversation to have. And then just the decade and the century so far. Like this movie is being received in such a hyperbolic way that it is definitely there is going to be a more muted response if it hasn't arrived already, because it is just this massive fucking pop of a movie that we don't see a lot. But I kind of want to see like where you guys feel like something like this might end up in the canon of the 2020s or in the 21st century, or if you want to broaden out even more of sequels or sci-fi entries in all of film history.
I mean, I will say right now, Going through with Denis, starting with Incendies, he has now made 8 movies that have stepped through, including Incendies, in the Hollywood landscape. I have Dune Part 2 at number 3 right now.
Okay.
So ahead of it,
still Enemy.
Ahead of it, I have Arrival as taking over as my number 1 spot.
Over Enemy?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I think Arrival might be like
he's growing up.
I think Arrival might be like one of the best movies of the 2010s, if not the best.
It's so good, dude.
It's like one of my favorite sci-fi movies ever. Perfect movie. And then I have Enemy number 2. Because I think Enemy is the best, like one of the best psychological movies that I've ever seen in my life. And then Dune 2, number 3. And then I have Dune 4, Incendies 5, Blade Runner 2049 6. I know that's going to hurt you a little bit.
Tough.
Prisoners 7, Sicario 8. The thing is, all of those movies are at minimum 4 to 4.5 star movies. Like, there's no bad movies on there. Having Sicario at 8 almost feels bad because, like, Sicario would be the best movie that, like, 99.999% of filmmakers could ever hope to make. So,
I've been having a bit of a struggle in my letterbox, trying to make sense of how to slot some of these things in multiple lists, right?
I know you're a Blade Runner head.
I always get hung up if I'm like, well, if this movie's over this movie on this list, then should it be over this movie?
Literally on this list? The same thing earlier today. Whenever there's the whole prompt of, I think one of our friends from the critics group posted like rank your last 10 Best Picture winners, and I was like, well, let me look at my big picture, because at first I was like, well, I'm gonna put Spotlight here, and here, and then I was like, well, wait, like if I look at this, I actually have Birdman right here in 4th place, and like, because
here's where I'm at. I think this is, to me, the best movie Denis Villeneuve has ever made. Like, that's kind of where I'm feeling right now.
It's kind of the apex of a lot of what
it is just such a home run that it's very difficult for me not to say it's number 1, especially because I've lived in Denis' version of Arrakis for 3 years now. Like, the first Dune is one of my all-time favorite movies now. I think when that movie first came out, I was still very much in Blade Runner land, and it took me a little while to be like, okay, maybe I can slot Blade Runner underneath. But then again, like, there's the whole complete story thing, right? Mm-hmm. Do you see part 1 and part 2 as one film? Or do you try to split them up? Does Blade Runner go in between part 1 and 2? You know, those are the types of things that I start to think about, is like, what are all the different ways to evaluate the legacy of Dune, of Denis Villeneuve's Dune, especially if we're looking ahead to a potential part 3. When stacking it up against like the movies of the 21st century or the 2020s, I kind of like combining franchises together. You know, if I'm trying to rank the Lord of the Rings, that's just one slot. It's just the Lord of the Rings for the best of the 21st century, right? Or what was another one that I had on here? I guess the Before trilogy, even though one of those is in the 90s. But even still, is like, I don't want to complicate things too much.
It's funny. I like almost don't think of the Before trilogy as they very clearly are a trilogy, but it's so weird to think about those as like a franchise of movies, because it's apples to oranges.
Looking at the 2020 so far, if you pair the 2 Dune movies together, that's probably my favorite. Just anything of the 2020 so far. Mm-hmm. Up there, I'd also put things like Poor Things, Spider-Verse, Everything Everywhere, RRR, Nope. Like the 2020s are heating up really, really well. And I feel like Dune to me is kind of the defining movie so far. It's definitely the defining movie of the year. And good luck to any other movie that's going to try this year.
There's so much time left, before awards season starts ramping up. So we'll see who else can make a splash. But it's not like this one's going to be like, oh, it's forgotten about because it came out so early. No. This isn't that kind of thing.
It also has the benefit of this is looking like a light movie year, especially from like a blockbuster perspective, that like I don't think that we'll forget about this one in the same way. I don't know. the whole like, where is it in 21st century? I don't know if I'm like ready for that conversation yet. But whenever you're talking about the 2020s, I mean, it's a 5-star movie, and there's only so many 5-star movies that I have in the 21st century. Yeah. So like, you're right there with like May December. Your poor things. Hey, babe, do you want to fire up Dune Part 2 or May December tonight? Definitely. Which one or the other? I'm still a huge fan of
Stilgar going, I am naive.
Athrithon.
Lithana Gaib.
I think Athrithon.
I'm still out here for Worst Person in the World is one of the best movies of the 21st century.
That's a great fucking movie.
The 2020s.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the point is that's right there in that conversation. It is tough though, whenever you are talking about like whenever we're comparing it, again, you mentioned like the Lord of the Rings or before movies and stuff like that, because those are such a beginning, middle, end, and we don't know the end yet. And so like, not to think, I have zero doubts that Denis will fumble any kind of bags or anything like that. But whenever this is made, like I that's whenever I can kind of evaluate it as a whole picture more.
This is the whole book. This completes the narrative of the first book.
But this movie ends with, I don't want to say, it doesn't end with a cliffhanger in the same way that Dune Part 1 was, but it ends with a little bit of a ... instead of just a period.
I mean, it's the same as the first one. There's a lot of mirroring that's happening.
It is also interesting that unlike a lot of those other franchise trilogies and movies that were coming beforehand, like this wasn't all made at the same time like Lord of the Rings movies, where they're like, we're going to make a trilogy of books right now.
Which is smart.
For every one of these, Warner's like, make this one and let's see if it makes money.
Right. Let's let it have a full cycle. We are a
bleeding company right now. We need this to be profitable.
They should have just greenlit all the Madam Web movies.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Damn it.
I guarantee you that during Part 1, they had a lot of this shit ready to go. They were not waiting. They were actively working on Part 2 before it was officially
at least like
announced.
Script wise and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also, there's a lot of things you don't need to do again. Like once you have things designed, props, sets, costumes, like all these things, you can definitely lean on the original pass on the world. All right, here's some sequels I'm going to throw out at you guys, and you let me know if you feel like Dune 2 should be considered above or below some of these Part 2s. Shrek 2.
Tough.
Both of them are 5-star movies. Both of them have a protagonist that sometimes you have to question their intentions.
Right. I argued for Shrek 1 when we had our big fight about this, but Shrek 2 is the best Shrek movie.
And so entertaining.
Yeah.
And so I guess if Dune 3 falls off hard, then Dune 2 will go down as that. But the thing is, it's not going to fall off.
No, it's not going to fall off. It's Dune, I guess.
Mamma Mia, here we go again.
You tell me.
Yeah, Ernest, you're going to have to be the sole.
I think it might be better than Mamma Mia too.
Oh,
okay.
Toy Story 2.
Oh, man.
A movie we will cover partially soon.
I like this better than Toy Story 2.
Toy Story 2 is so perfect. Toy Story 2 is like a little bit of a Roman Empire thing where like I think about the owls cleaning scene from Toy Story 2 like 4 to 5 times a week of just like this is the origin of my hyperfixation with cleaning certain things and taking care of collectibles.
Here's a really, really tough one. Top Gun Maverick.
So this was what I was thinking of whenever we're talking about the best blockbusters of the 2020s.
Yeah.
They're so different from each other because one of them is like such a Top Gun Maverick is a movie for literally everyone, and I wouldn't say Dune 2 is quite that. I'd give the edge to Dune 2, but I think both of them are like they're what you want from big blockbuster entertainment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick wins if we're judging just by amount of One Republic songs in the movie. It wins by 1.
The Dark Knight.
Really tight one. I have complicated feelings about The Dark Knight, so I'd give it to Dune 2.
Yeah, but it's not, I mean, even with how insanely successful this is culturally, it'll never even come close to touching.
That's more of a Nolan versus a Denis thing, which it is funny. I am happy that Nolan has like taken Denis under his wing as like we're now boys as like the two principal Hollywood visual blockbuster storytellers.
I mean, there's been a big conversation around who has the better filmography so far. Like if you just line up their last, 7 movies against each other, is Denis going to come out on top?
I mean, you know where I stand in this argument.
That's just me. Because Nolan has Oppenheimer, Tenet, Dunkirk, Interstellar, Dark Knight Rises, Inception. And then Dark Knight before that, if you want to go to like 8 deep. And then Denis, obviously.
And Sunday is 8 deep.
Yeah. Dune Part 2, Blade Runner, Arrival, Prisoner, Sicario.
He just hasn't hit a phase where he is like decreasing in scale yet. Like he just keeps getting bigger and better.
Which is crazy because it's like if this isn't the peak, then what isn't?
Yeah, I would imagine after the Dunes. Like, what's he gonna do?
So he has already said that he is. I think he has 2 or 3 projects lined up that he's like, I need to take a break from Arrakis. I'll come back.
Cleopatra.
What I could see happening
is a little
Cleopatra
a little too difficult for me to deal with all that sand.
I could see a little bit of an Oppenheimer thing happening for Denis, where it's like maybe Dune Part 2 will win a bunch of technical awards. Maybe Denis will get a nomination. Maybe he'll be snubbed again, and then like his next movie,
something more grounded
based on a real person. Maybe it is Cleopatra or something like that. The Academy is like, all right, now you made an adult movie.
You made a real one.
You one. Yeah. Which,
I
would love to see the more pared down version. I mean, he hasn't done that since Enemy, Prisoners, Sicario time, even to a lesser extent. But
so I made a rough best sequels of all time list on Letterboxd. This is where Dune 2 stands. This is all the movies that I put above it.
Okay.
Going from bottom to top. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Yes.
Spider-Man 2.
I would agree with that.
Aliens, T2 Judgment Day, Before Sunset, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Godfather Part 2.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say, you have to have Godfather Part 2. You have to have Before Sunset. Yeah. I think that's pretty good. What do you have? Hold on, I'm gonna look again.
Below it?
Spider-Man 2. I like that.
That's one of my all-time.
I knew that was gonna have to be on there. And I do think that The Two Towers, and maybe part of it is because we know the full story, everything, but Two Towers is the best one of those 3 movies.
You think so?
I think so. It's my favorite.
Oh shit.
It's that or Fellowship. Return of the King is actually my least favorite of the 3.
Damn. It's too long.
No, it's just there are like 12 endings in Return of the King. It does take a while to get there. I don't know. It's just I think Fellowship is like the best bringing a band together movie, and then Two Towers is like the best mid-journey movie. The comparisons to Empire are the biggest thing that have been comped to Dune Part 2, but that's one of those things where it's so hard to judge this movie in a vacuum to Empire Strike Back because we have 40 years of connection to Empire. We don't have that with Dune.
Which I'm curious to see if that happens. That would be so weird because Dune is so much weirder than any of these other ones. It's just so out there.
But like it almost has worked in its favor that so many things have cribbed off of the Dune lore that people are like, the voice, oh, that's like the Force.
Right.
Like big sandworm. That's just like in Beetlejuice, where big sandworm when they leave house.
Hey, Beetlejuice.
Yeah, it's people just recognize different things from all other pop culture things.
All right, last couple things. Christopher Walken as the Emperor. Muad'Dib.
We did get Muad'Dib.
Love that.
Absolutely cucked in this movie.
Yeah,
it's just a loser. Gotta say.
Shout out to Tim Blake Nelson, who was cast, I believe, as Jessica
Jessica,
Lady Fenring's husband, Count Fenring. His role got cut.
Oh,
yeah, I would have loved to have seen him.
I hope that he comes for Messiah. Put our boy Tim Blake in there.
Florence Pugh, great casting, doesn't get that much to do. I believe that her role will expand a lot more in the next one. But again, it's nice to see this cast populated with such talents, because it kind of just elevates the whole thing.
mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to see if there was anyone else in the cast that we did. I guess Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother.
Charlotte Rampling rules.
She's great. Bautista, just screaming his
haven't
fucking
brought him
ass
up.
off.
Yeah, he gets his shit cooked by Austin.
Yeah, Fade.
He gets ate up, literally, no crumbs left by Austin's hose.
Also got a shout out Sting, who played Fade Routha in the David Lynch original.
That rocks.
He laid the groundwork, man.
Is it Sean Young who plays Chani?
Yes.
Rachel from Blade Runner?
Not good. Very bad.
Well, she is white, playing
it's
supposed to be desert person.
It's tough.
That's not great.
I had one last thought about the whole Bene Gesserit thing, and it's like there's a moment at the very end where the Reverend Mother looks at Jessica and says, "You should know better. You should know that there are no sides." Something like that.
Yeah.
Like you picked the wrong side.
Yeah.
You should know there are no sides. And I think that, again, when you're trying to break open all the things that Dune is about, that is one of the best things to latch onto, because as it gets more frustrating in our world to see these horrible things happen and wonder who's allowing them to happen, you start to think about like the idea of there being no good guys and bad guys, no sides, right? And who's benefiting off of these horrible things.
It's giving Lord of War is what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I mean, who's selling the ships to these Fremen, man? Yeah. Who's allowing them to be loaded up when they go off?
I'm going to be up because of Charlotte I don't know how much Rebecca Ferguson or Charlotte Rampling will be involved in it, but I am still very, very interested in the Bene Gesserit show.
Yeah, Dune Prophecy. Apparently, what they have said is that will be the origin of the Bene Gesserit. So it will take place like thousands of years in the past.
That sounds really cool. Like, I think that is something where it could actually enrich the story in a way.
All right. I'm trying to just see if there's any other big things that we miss. Love the production design, great sets, great look to everything, just incredible environments. Just a feast for your eyes to look at. Another shout out to Hans Zimmer and just the score. It pairs so well with everything. And Denis, I mean, fucking king, man. Like he really did it. He adapted Dune. A lot of people said it was impossible. There's a whole documentary called Horodowski's Dune about how this Spanish filmmaker Horodowski just wasted like a decade of his life trying to get an adaptation of Dune off the ground that just didn't happen. It eventually became Lynch's version, and then we all know how that turned out. There's been some shitty like straight to TV adaptations that basically do not exist, but you can check out. They're out there. One of them is starring James McAvoy. But man, it's just good that the movies are still able to give us some big wowzers like this one. You know, sometimes it feels like it may be a time long past, you know, for your Lord of the Rings type movies. But man, Denis just fucking brought it. So good.
Yeah. Just like an unimpeachably great fucking movie. Again, it's easy to seem like I'm taking a lot for granted just because we covered so much in the first movie where it was all so novel. We were like, whoa, what the fuck? Like every single piece of it is designed with so much care.
It is one of those things too, where like it has those, it's wow moments, but it's in a way that you can appreciate both as people like us who watch so many fucking movies all the time, or if you're somebody who goes to the movie twice a year. Like my coworkers like all saw Dune and they're like, yeah, we had a Dune day where we watched the first Dune and then we went and saw it and they were like, yeah, it rocked. And they're like, yeah, I have some questions about things, but like I just was like blown away and thought it was one of the best movies I've seen in years.
Someone really beefed it. They should have released like a big girl movie, have a Barbenheimer situation.
Man.
Well, this was supposed to come out back in like October, November. So I don't know what was coming out back then.
Anyone But You.
Right. Yeah.
Anyone But Dune.
Damn.
We gotta find something.
Real quick, I forgot to ask like what you guys thought of the big scene that Timmy gives where he kind of like asserts his power.
Or he says the name of he says Dune.
Yeah. That's a huge scene.
That shit like that like kind of there's so many there's like the the meme of like the guy who's just like sitting in his chair and then just like sits up a bit. I feel like I did that like approximately 15 times in the movie, and watching this in IMAX, me and a guy next to me both just did that multiple times, like at the exact same point. And especially like as soon as he like locked in and started doing his whole like speech, like I am Muad'Dib, and just like goes from there on, it's like one of those jaw drop moments of like, oh, Timmy, I'll join your cult, brother. I'm in.
It's great.
I'm in. You have the power.
It's awesome because the way that he proves it to these people is the exact way that a fake prophet would, which is like going up to like a guy in the crowd who could just be a plant, even though we know this isn't the case, but being like, you feel bad about your dead blah blah blah. Yeah, and they're like, oh
yeah, Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah, that's how like fake psychics still work to this day. So I thought it was really, really well balanced.
I again, going back to the casting point, like I think that the fact that it's Timothée Chalamet just does so much work, because there's always a part of you that is doubting him. Like you're like, this guy, he's so skinny, he's so small. Like he's a little mouse, he's a Muad'Dib. Like there is no way that this man is actually going to assert any kind of aggressive dominance. And it feels a little performative. It feels like he's compensating a little bit. And I think that's part of the intention. I think that's part of what they're trying to get across with this character, is that sometimes the people you should fear the most are the ones that you might be less inclined to fear. The less obvious choices is what may happen sometimes. The charismatic leaders, the ones that are not overtly like threatening.
It's a movie about how scary Mayor Pete is.
Exactly. I mean, it's it's not a total 1-to-1 comparison, but I think that is one of the biggest things. Is maybe there was a fella named Jesus out there that amassed a following, and maybe some things went out of control. Maybe people signed up for the wrong thing, thinking that it was for a good cause. And now look where we are, taking women's bodily autonomy away. Like there's a straight line.
Yeah. So listeners, stay tuned for our Sound of Freedom pod coming next week.
All right. Well, love the movie. I'll probably try to watch it again in IMAX if Frozen Empire hasn't taken over the large IMAX screen.
Over all of them. And the problem is that Frozen Empire actually made money this weekend too.
Did it?
Yeah.
They need to bring back Dune 2 once Frozen Empire.
Well, also A24 is going to start taking some of the IMAX ones too with their re-release of things.
Oh yeah, Civil War coming.
Hereditary and
Civil War premiered at South by Southwest, being called a masterpiece.
Here's the
thing. From the director of Men.
Here's the thing about South by Southwest. Literally don't listen to anything coming out of South by Southwest, because everybody that goes to South by, after talking with people who went to South by this year, they are just giving you alcohol like right before you go into every screening. Right. They're just trying to get everybody liquored up so that they'll go in and be like, this is great, masterpiece coming soon. And then it comes out wide and people are like, that was pretty mids.
How do you guys think that Dune 2 will size up against something like Furiosa, like any of the other big major releases of the year?
I will say, I think that like George Miller revolutionized the way that we see sand and desert is captured on film. And then Denis kind of has, I don't want to say one-upped him, but he has evolved past like that view of like plains and the openness of desert. So I'm sure that they're going to be drastically different movies, but it's funny that I'm interested to see the two of them compared to each other.
Hell yeah.
Given that through line.
Megalopolis,
I'm ready for it to be this year's Babylon.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping for.
We get another Austin Butler voice with the bike riders. So we can compare his bike rider voice is.
Hey, we're going to get a new Zendaya movie in like a month.
Oh, yeah. Challengers.
Yeah, that's coming like super soon.
Yeah.
So,
I want to see that in IMAX.
Let's go. Yeah. So I guess we can wrap it up there. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts. Leave us a like. And check out webottommike.net to get every episode in your inbox. Thank you, donors, for donating. Joining the Discord, patreon.com/webottommike, $5 a month. Support the show. Next week, it looks like we are back to our series on the films of Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks with Tom Cruise's Interview with the Vampire, The Vampire Chronicles is the full title.
Are you
serious? Don't forget the colon.
Right. Yes.
I've never known that there was a subtitle to it.
No sandworms in this film, unfortunately. But there might be some water of life.
Do they? Yeah, I was gonna say, do they drink some blood? Blood of creatures?
It could. You might see a little spice in here with these vampires.
Let's go.
Stick around for that.
Oh yeah.
We'll see you there next time on Wabam. Bye-bye.
Bye.